Off. Right, you're all being recorded for evidence. Thank you guys for being here. Appreciate it. So today I wanted to talk about checklists. So it should be a pretty quick, simple, short, and fast kind of a meeting. I just want to make sure that you guys know that we have these checklists available, first of all, and that you pay attention to them. So we have them both printed out on paper here, and then we offer them digitally as well. And so a lot of times when you're going through a listing package, you're not sure that you have all of the paperwork that you need in order to make a complete listing package. So I want to show you that checklist. And of course, the sales contract is the same way. So we've got one for listings and we've got one for sales. So I'm going to show you what they look like and tell you where you can find them. And we'll send them out, of course, in I don't know if it'll be today or Friday, but we'll make sure that you guys all have a digital copy of the checklist, just so that we can make sure we don't miss any important paperwork. So paper. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. I think, maybe. Let's see. Yes. All right, can you guys see this checklist? Give me a thumbs up, Sissy. Thank you, Debbie, Linda. All right, so check it out. So this is the complete listing checklist, and you can see there's quite a bit of information on here. So I'm going to blow it up so we can kind of go through it a little bit. So when obviously, you know when you list a home, there's a standard listing agreement, but there's a lot of go with it. So there's a lot of addendums and disclosures and things, and a lot of it becomes very redundant. And sometimes we think, oh, well, we don't really need that, or we shouldn't need that. And so I just kind of wanted to talk through some of these items. And the checklist is designed to be a tool to help you. I mean, you could put the owner's name and contact information on here, email address, and then you can make sure that you're staying on track. Obviously we use RAIN in our market, so you would check the RAIN box. And then of course, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, you'll see some things on there that don't necessarily belong to you. I also use this checklist for our, and the sales checklist for our Newport News James River office. It's just easier for me to have one checklist than two.
Truth. And the asterisks, Stacia, what are the asterisks? Are they representative of what's required?
Items that are required based on certain situations.
Okay.
So like the first three are required, most definitely. As I said, the MLS information, it won't be for you guys. You do have 2 days to put in a photo. We only have 1 day to put in a listing. So if it's dated the 14th, it can go in no later than today, the 15th. If you date it the Friday, it can go in no later than that following Monday. That's basically those deadlines. DPOR, ACUs, lead paint, the POA condo stuff, those are required. However, you don't necessarily need the ACUs or the lead paint or the POA condo. So they're required, but only if necessary.
Correct. So obviously if the home was built prior to 1978, then the lead-based paint disclosure is required. And if the home is in what is considered to be a high noise or potential crash zone, then we need that ACUs or the noise disclosure. Those are only required if they're required. And then of course the summary of rights and obligations is always required. And then the explanation of fee structure. So you'll see that in the template. So in our area in Hampton Roads, Long and Foster charges a $295 flat fee on every transaction, with only a few exceptions, that being a foreclosure property or a VA buyer. So if you have a veteran buyer, they're not allowed, and we don't charge the $295 flat fee.
I believe we don't charge on lots either.
Land, so vacant land, we don't need to charge the $295 flat fee.
And you can certainly charge anybody you want. The only ones we can't actually collect from are government loans like the VA loans. So if you want to collect on a lot listing, then be my guest. If you do a 7% listing, technically we don't take the 295 off those, but if you did a 7 or above, you can certainly collect that 295. That 295 technically comes back to the office. In a roundabout way, it pays for items that we use like FedEx to get your commission checks, the toilet paper, the folders that you guys use, some other random things, the paper.
And we could also let you know too that some agents charge more than the 295, and they'll keep the difference. So that's definitely an option for you. You know, I've seen agents charge, you know, $550, $650, $750, and they just keep the difference because Long and Foster collects $295, but anything over and above that can come back to you.
Correct. On a listing, that usually gets included in your commission, so it is part of your split, unless we get like permission from the higher ups to make that not a thing. So Jason and the other people above him would have to approve that. So speak to Jason first before you start doing those items, because we do need permission.
Yeah, if you wanted to do that, then we'll put a plan in place and say, okay, this is how it's gonna work. So.
And I've had a few agents do that.
But it's definitely an option for you guys if you wanted to collect a little bit more money per transaction. So cool. Also, if you know, sometimes, you know, you ever go to the car dealership and you want to buy a car and they have a $6.99 processing fee and it just pisses you off because they're taking this extra money from you. Sometimes our clients feel like this $295 is insulting. And so, you know, we waive it occasionally. It's not actually waived. It comes from us, the agent. So, so keep that in mind. If you ever tell somebody, I'm not going to charge you the $295, like I'll do that for my past clients, or for clients who just don't want to pay it. I'll say, you know what, it's no problem. I'm going to go ahead and take care of that for you. But just know it's going to come out of your commission if you agree to do that. And of course, the DPOR, we all know about the Virginia Residential Disclosure Statement. It's referred to as DPOR, which obviously is that place up in Richmond, and I'm not real sure why we call it DPOR.
Department.
It is the
Professional and Occupational Regulation.
but it is the Residential Property Disclosure Statement. So that's going to be required on anything except land or a new construction.
And bank owns are exempt, and they should have that uploaded at the time of the listing. It will read across it exempt. Your client doesn't have to sign it, but it's supposed to be there for you to see.
So the law says, and the disclosure acknowledges that the law says that if someone buys a home built prior to 1978, that we as agents are supposed to provide them a booklet on the lead-based paint hazards or the hazards of lead-based paint. Now I usually tell them, you know, not to eat the paint or lick the walls, and they're good with that. But we do have the booklets. So we've got a whole bunch of these booklets. So you can put some in your buyer packages to make sure that you've given this information then to your buyer.
I'm not tall enough to show it in the camera.
Yeah, I can do it. Look. There it is.
Show it in the camera. There's actually a digital copy that you can get as well.
Yeah, we have it in PDF as well. All right. Estimated seller's net sheet. So there's one in our template, in our Instanet template that you can use. I normally default to the one that Sage Title offers us. It's really clean, easy. It's a website. Just go there, plug in the numbers. It's very, very cool, and it does the math for you. Whereas the estimated seller's net sheet in the RAIN template is not quite as pretty, and it doesn't do the math for you. But it is something that you want to offer your seller so that they know what to expect when this home sells.
You skipped like 2 of them.
Yeah.
So the marketing and seller internet options, I believe I've removed because it's very misleading. That's a a Long and Foster form talking about coming soons. They had required us to use that because it also had the internet options on it. Like if your seller wants it not to be on a blogging website like Zillow and Trulia or the AVM websites. But the coming soon section is very misleading, so I believe I removed that. These checklists, as you can see in the top corner of your screen, says 421 because I haven't actually updated some of these. I believe the sales checklist is the same. I will get to those eventually, but just know that if you don't see it there, you can certainly ask me and say, hey, what's this and why is it up there? But yeah, that one I think is missing from the template itself.
So most of these, just about all of these forms are included in the template for listing a property. So I know some of you aren't familiar with the templates yet, but you will be. So once you get your RAIN access, we can introduce you to Instanet, which is where all of these templates and packages of documents are found. And so we just want to make sure that you're aware that there's a checklist to accompany those templates so that you make sure you're turning in all of the correct paperwork that might be required depending on the circumstances of your transaction. Do you guys use the checklist, Evelyn? Yeah. So, is that helpful? Yeah.
And you don't necessarily need to turn these in to me. I mean, it would be helpful. I know I use this as an example, but in the opportunity or the chance that something happens to you, we have your client's name, number, and email address, and Jason can contact them to tell them, you know, like you're in the hospital or you're, you know, sick with, you know, pneumonia or something, and you can't help them, but he's here.
So yeah, in the event that you become
Incapacitated.
That's the word I was
We'll,
looking for,
or-
intoxicated.
we have or
Intoxicated.
intoxicated. We have the information so that we can, you know, try to manage your transaction until you sober up. So we've got the, it's also a good reminder, you know, your Long and Foster just listed cards. You get 100 free just listed cards mailed out and paid for by Long and Foster with every listing. And so all you get, they're going to email you a proof and you select the proof and you send it and it just goes out automatically. And it looks something like this. So this is a, so this is a just listed card. And then it's got a QR code and your information then on the back. So that's going to happen automatically.
That's a just sold.
There we go. Adrian's card there. So, and so this happens automatically behind the scenes. You just want to make sure that, you know, you don't forget to approve the proof that they send you so that that will go out.
And you can change it to where it's horizontal, vertical instead of horizontal. You can't really change anything else. The colors are white and red, and that's just how it is.
The so in this market, because properties have been selling really quick, we haven't done a lot of post signs. If the market changes and you want to use the wood post signs, we can certainly do that. You just have to let station know to order them because we have a contractor who does those signs for us. So Sissy, you won't be out there digging those holes. Don't worry about that. I got you. So
Yeah, and Jason does split the cost with you. The total cost is base price is $40, and then depending on where he has to go, it can be a little higher. But Jason splits that cost with you, so the least you could spend is $20. I think it's $20. And then, of course, depending on where it goes from there. And that's to install and remove the post sign and to handle any issues that come up. The guy doesn't charge us for, say, the sign's leaning or the panel gets faded and we need to change it out. So he's really good. He's also the husband of a broker at another firm.
cool. So the SS addendum, I'm thinking that's probably short sale.
It is.
So we don't see a lot of short sales in this environment, but they may very well come back. And if they do, there's a special addendum. It's a short sale addendum that defines the terms of this short sale. And it's interesting because when I was talking to Julie this morning, I don't know if Julie's here, but Julie is actually looking at a short sale property. Well, she has a buyer looking at a short sale property. So we may see more and more short sales come to the market as a result of, the whole economy shifting gears. And then defective drywall. That's another thing that we don't see. They actually took that off of the disclosure. So
Again, I haven't updated it. No.
so if you're not familiar though, in the late 90s, early 2000s, we were buying a lot of drywall from China and other places that had toxic chemicals in it, and it caused damage to the properties. And so for a long time, we referred to it as Chinese drywall. And so there was a special disclosure, obviously, to go with that. But we haven't seen it in quite some time, and so we could probably remove that. I think it's all been dealt with by now.
Wasn't it making people sick too?
Yeah, it could aggravate people's asthma. It could make them sick. And the chemical in it, I'm not sure what it was, but it would actually cause the copper wiring in houses to corrode. So it was a big deal. They built entire neighborhoods using this drywall, and those entire neighborhoods had to be gutted, completely gutted, and have air quality tests before they could go back in and refinish and replace all of the drywall. So it was a big deal. So if you hear anybody talk about it, Chinese drywall or defective drywall, that's where it came from, late 90s, early 2000s. Cool. So voice pad, you guys receive a voice pad account as a Long & Foster agent. Not very many people take advantage of it, but it is a super friggin' cool tool. And so you can have a sign writer on your listing that says, what does it say? Stacia's gonna see if we can find one. But you can put a special sign writer on there where people can call in and they can listen to a description, an audible description of the property. It could be the computer or it could be your voice, actually. But when someone calls in, VoicePad will automatically text you the contact information for those people.
Right.
And it turns into a lead. And so
Sheena uses it.
it's completely free to you guys. It's a fantastic service that Long & Foster pays for. And so all you got to do is activate it. And we have riders that will go on top of your sign or hang maybe under the sign, something like that. So
Here's one, but we can't use it because the number's jacked up. But
yeah,
they text whatever that number to that 800 number. That 800 number is correct, and they can actually call the number and get the property address.
I looks like it had to have them specifically for you.
Yeah, actually,
it's just a general thing.
So what happens is you can order your own riders with numbers specific that you own. You become the owner of the 12152 number.
But that's not necessary.
It's not, no,
Okay.
because you can call the 800 number and they will, it'll ask you to put in the number of the house and it picks up kind of where you're at.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
It's kind of creepy, but
it's available as an
I have
added
no
tool.
more riders, so Jason's
So.
gonna have to order some.
Yeah, we had a handful. We'll get another
Sheena
handful.
uses them.
Okay.
Your mom uses them too, because when I pull up the list, I see Sharon Gooden.
Okay.
Because like I said, you can get your own riders and they'll send you your own numbers.
Cool. And then let's see. Of
Property
course, property photos. Obviously, you know about that. We have a relationship with a couple of different photography companies. So the office pays $100 towards your professional photography. And so, that's enough to get the basic package of pictures from virtual Tidewater. So you guys are certainly welcome to take advantage of that. And then obviously we're going to put them into the Moxie CRM as a client. And then
So the second part where it says automatic MLS update on the area, what you do is, it's not really an MLS update so much as when you put them in Moxie, you can set them up for a neighborhood news or whatever the zip code one is. I think it's neighborhood news, right?
Yep.
And you put in the zip code of the property address and it tells them like what's been selling in their neighborhood. And
Any-
make sure, yeah, the photos, make sure you send me those, at least one. I could care less about the runs.
Any questions on the listing checklist? Anybody?
Oh, dang, I gotta change that logo too.
Pretty simple. Simple. All right. And we'll go to, this is the sales contract checklist. So if you have a buyer, then this is the checklist that might apply.
And please be reminded that some of this stuff does not apply to you.
Yeah. So, it's kind of a cool sheet to put in your file so that you have all of the information. You know who the other agent is, you know how to contact the other agent. Which MLS the property is in, who's holding the earnest money deposit. And so you can put all of that information up top here.
Don't forget the case number.
Case number
VA, it's at the very top.
right here. Okay, so this top right corner is designed for your case number because our case numbers always start with VA.
Because we're in Virginia.
Is that why?
Yes.
No, cool.
North Carolina's our NC.
Because we're in Virginia.
Because we're in Virginia.
Listing, sold, sale, HUD, VA, FISBO, proposed settlement date, who's the lender, when was the home built, what type of loan is it? And of course, this is as much for your benefit as it would be for the office. So you fill it out as, as it works for you.
It also helps you with your case sheet.
Yeah, a lot of this information you'll need to do your case sheet. And then would you recommend this agent for our office? That's kind of cool. So, I mean, if you're working with an agent who you think, does a really good job, let us know. Because I'm more than happy to call them and say, Randall thinks that you might fit in at this office. Have you considered relocating or doing something different? And of course, that's a great compliment for most agents.
Yeah, and I think I need to update it because I don't think it's 24 hours anymore for the direct deposit. I mean, the check.
So we've got the case sheet online, obviously. So some of you may not be familiar with the case sheet online, but you will be. Don't worry about that right yet. And of course, the earnest money deposit, you need to turn that in, obviously, as soon as possible. Most earnest money deposits now are being done electronically, which is a big help. And it's just so you know, you can send a link to your client and they can do an ACH bank transfer for their earnest money deposit so that we don't actually have to collect checks anymore, which is really nice.
And it must come from their checking account, not their savings account, correct?
Correct.
Correct?
Obviously, you're going to want to have a copy of the bank's pre-approval letter or the pre-qualification letter. You're going to want to have the exclusive right to represent the buyer agreement signed. If you don't get it signed beforehand, please get it signed by the contract. It's kind of important. A copy of the purchase contract. If there were a referral fee due, then there's going to be a W-9 that might accompany that for tax purposes. But most of the time we don't see that.
That's if you're giving a referral fee to somebody. We need their W-9.
Right.
Receiving. We need.
Then they want your.
Then they're gonna want
W-9.
ours.
That's right.
But that's for if you're writing a contract for somebody in Northern Virginia and you're giving them money and they're not part of Long and Foster. So the only time we need a W-9 is when it's not a Long and Foster person.
So it's a lot of paperwork. And of course, it's always nice if you can keep it digital. Nobody needs the paper anymore. So if you do it on paper, obviously you're going to scan it in, turn it into a PDF, and you can even put it in the order that you want. You've got the summary of rights and obligations. You've got the POA or condo disclosure, if in fact it's in a property owners or condo association. Property inspection contingency addendum, whether you're going to inspect the property or not. The rain consumer disclosure, which is, what is that? The CDIF?
Yeah,
So there's a CDIF is what I refer to it as, but it's a 6-page disclosure. It's very redundant. And so the more familiar you become with some of this paperwork, you're going to think the more redundant it seems. You'll see the same disclosures over and over and over, and unfortunately they are required. And again, the lead-based paint disclosure, if your client is buying a home built prior to 1978.
now with regards to that consumer disclosure, and the affiliated business, the home warranty and the explanation of fee structure, if it's our listing and we are getting a purchase agreement on it, like you've ratified a contract, I don't need those documents again for the seller. We already have them. Make sense?
So if it's a Long and Foster listing,
If it's our listing.
yeah,
Like say Randall lists a home and it goes under contract, you don't have to turn in those same items again because I already have them.
you've already turned them in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they get uploaded with the rest of the stuff. Like I already have
Okay.
it. So don't worry about that.
Let's see.
The brokerage fee notice.
Point, Stacia, point. Selling firm brokerage fee notice, yeah. So so when you're preparing your package, you're gonna want a copy of the broker fee. That's usually one of the last things I collect, but some people collect them early, and that's probably better. So go ahead and get that broker fee agreement signed by the other agent and you, and that way we can send a copy of it to the title company so that they know how to process the commission and how to split that commission up at closing. Of course, the 295, if you're using Sage or Shaheen, they know about the 295. If you're using someone else, they may not know about the 295 flat fee. So you're gonna have to let them know.
Correct. So if it's our listing, they're gonna want a copy of the standard agency exclusive right. It's that 2-page with the commission where it says, it already says 295 plus the total commission, plus whatever you're giving to the other side. That form will also, you could also give that to the settlement company because that was signed by your seller, acknowledging that 295.
You can print out a copy of the MLS, which is not a bad idea. When you're writing a contract or when you have a contract on a property, go ahead and print a copy of the MLS. That way, if something were to change or they were to edit the description of the property or the contents or what might be included in the listing, you have that copy that you saved as of the day of the contract. So if they go back and change it after the fact and say the appliances were not included, you can say, oh, yes, they were. Or if they go back and they change the commission to 2, but when you wrote the contract, it was 3, you have evidence of that. So a good idea to save a copy of the MLS printout at the time of contract. Obviously, if it's a disclosure, if there's a designated agency form, so if you're working a deal with another Long and Foster agent, then it becomes designated agency. So you're designated to represent one party, and the other Long and Foster agent is designated by Long and Foster to represent the other party.
And dual is when you're doing both sides.
Yeah, so that the term dual agency comes into play when you as the sole agent are representing both parties as a client. We don't recommend that. We try to avoid that. It's a very fine line. And so, I mean, it requires super transparency and openness. And even then, one of your clients could feel like they were taken advantage of or cheated. And so we try really hard to avoid that. So what we can do, and what I have done most of the time, is I'll represent one party as a client, and I'll help the other client as an unrepresented party to the transaction. And there are disclosures that are required to identify, who I represent and who I don't represent. And that protects me legally, protects you legally.
Get it to someone else in your office. And
Get a referral fee.
Yep. Yeah. You can always ask somebody else in the office to take the other party to the transaction.
So if somebody were to chat.
Yeah. Even if you print the MLS agent
Yes, Debbie.
full to PDF and keep it digital in your computer. Correct. Yep. To save a copy of that MLS, definitely. And then the if you're going to have an early possession agreement or an extended possession agreement, then there's a disclosure. There's an agreement to that.
I do have one thing to say about that. Long and Foster does not hold that security deposit.
Good point.
So make sure that when you are filling that out, that Long and Foster's name is nowhere on that except that we are the listing or the seller, the listing or the selling side. And that's the only part that our name shows up.
So to give you an example, let's say we're going to have a seller possession. So our buyer is going to buy the house and they're going to close on March 15th, but the seller is not moving out until March 30th. So there's 2 weeks there. So there's a possession agreement that says the buyer and the seller agree that this is what's going to happen. And sometimes the buyer might want the seller to apply a deposit in case of damages. Maybe it's a $500 or $1,000 deposit. That deposit cannot be held by us. So you got to get the title company or the attorney's office to hold that deposit. It's a security deposit, essentially. And again, short sale addendum to purchase. If it applies, you're going to want that. If you do a lot of work in Surrey or Isle of Wight, you're going to run into these septic tanks on a lot of properties. So if you have a septic tank waiver, which I've never seen, honestly, I don't even know what it looks like. So chances are you're probably not going to run into that.
Well, in 18 years, I think I've seen one.
Yeah, so if you do have one, obviously turn it in. So you'll notice on the purchase agreement, it says, is there a septic tank subject to waiver? And so what that means is some properties have a septic tank, that was put in 100 years ago and it's no longer working. And so the EPA will want that septic tank removed, for whatever EPA reasons, but you can get a waiver. Sometimes the waivers are not transferable though. So sometimes when the property sells, the buyer is not going to be able to take over that waiver. So that's something to be careful of. If there's an abandoned septic system on a property, then it may be something that needs to be removed. And of course, you're always going to send your contract, your case sheet, and your commission agreement to the title company.
I gotta add the lender if,
That's
technically that needs to go to the lender as well.
That's true. Yeah.
I gotta fix that.
Just because you got a contract with a buyer, make sure your lender gets a copy of the contract.
If not, they'll call me.
Something else too is you don't necessarily need to send the lender your property inspection, right? They have nothing to do with that. A property inspection, a home inspection is completely negotiable, completely optional, and the lender does not need that. So don't send them your PICRA or your property inspection contingency addendum or anything like that. They just don't need it. And then, of course, to close the file out, you're gonna have a walkthrough. So normally walkthroughs are done, 24 hours or so, 48, 24 hours before closing, maybe even the same day. If you have an afternoon closing and you're gonna go do the final walkthrough in the morning, you wanna make sure that you turn that paperwork in. That's what protects you at the end of the day when your buyer moves into the house and finds something wrong. So you have this walkthrough that they've agreed to accept the home in its current condition.
And make sure you send that to me as well. Like, all of this stuff needs to come to me.
Is that walkthrough form, is that in?
It's in our
It is.
template.
Yeah, it's in
So
the
it's
template.
actually at the very bottom of the template.
Yeah.
When you go in there, it says walkthrough. It might be like it might be above like an addendum, because I include blank addendums in there as well in case you need those. Like the home inspect, the PICRAs, I include all of anything that you're gonna need for that transaction is in there, the basic stuff, because if it's, like say it's a POA and a condo, I might not necessarily have both in the packet. So you'll have to bring in whichever one's missing from the packet you pick. But you can certainly add documents and take documents away that don't apply.
You can custom fit and retrofit these templates, in any way, depending on the transaction that you're working on. And a big double asterisk is remind your buyers to have the utilities transferred. There's nothing worse than them not remembering this until closing day. And it's going to be 3 or 4 or 5 days or a week before they can get the gas turned on or the cable hooked up or something like that. It's really inconvenient for them. And I have done it so many times to so many clients, and I always feel bad about it. So remember to tell your clients to transfer the utilities.
That's what Debbie said.
Is it?
That's what Debbie said.
It's so true. Yeah. A week ahead. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And know that these checklists, they change a lot, not often enough, as you can tell, I haven't changed it in over a year, but I mean, most of these items haven't changed.
Yeah.
They're the same forms that we use all the time. Again, random forms will come in, but for the most part, what you see is pretty much the checklists. And we also have the case sheet where it says Long Foster case sheet. I have a PDF form, and there's also some printed here. It's a legal size page, but you can fill this out first before you go into case sheets. That way you have all the information in front of you, or you can wing it like I have to do sometimes when you guys don't fill out a case sheet and it's the end of the month and I need to make the numbers. But those are available. I can email and you can print the documents yourself. You can save them and just stare at them. It doesn't have it side by side to make sure you have everything. And if you notice on the sales checklist, it says listing side, selling side. It's whichever side you're handling. Again, not everything's going to be required. If you have the listing, we don't need the exclusive right to represent, but we do need the loan letter. You don't necessarily need some of these other items if you have the selling side. And make sure that you fill in all of this stuff when you complete the documents, especially on the listings. Rain likes to call us out on our D4, our ACUs, and our lead paints.
Yeah, so Rain is pretty strict about it, and so they will send you a nasty gram quick if you don't have those disclosures uploaded with your contract. So. Good.
Great.
They really are a great tool to make sure you've covered all your bases with doing a listing or having a sales contract. The more listings or sales you have, the more familiar you will become with what's required. Thank you, Debbie.
That is true. And you can practice, I know this sounds weird, but you can go into Instinet and practice filling out the forms, just to get familiar with what you're doing. I hear myself in my office. But yeah, you certainly practice. I mean, you can't, if you go into Authenticign from a template or from a transaction, you can't necessarily delete the transaction, but you can certainly go in there and have a bunch of test ones. I do ask that when you do listings, that you try and make the transaction the property address. It's easier for me to find. In a sales contract, of course, I would prefer the same thing, but if however you do it, just give me a heads up, so I can find your items that you have missing.
So some of you may not be familiar with this yet, but this is our RAIN login. This is your RAIN dashboard. And over on the right here are a whole bunch of tools, one of which is Instinet. And it's in Instinet that all of these forms are compiled into what we call templates. And so you select the template that is appropriate for the transaction. Is it a listing or is it a seller or what have you? And so this is where they're all kept and where they come. So here's an example of a transaction and all of the forms that accompany that based on what I selected. So this is what it will look like when you come into Instinet and you have a transaction that you're working on. So all of the forms required for this transaction were in the template, or I added them to the template. And so they're all here.
Go to template, the transaction, the main dashboard. The main dashboard, yeah. If you hit create transaction,
Over here on the right or left, you can hit the little plus sign to create a new transaction.
when you're doing a listing, you can use where it says import data, use, not there, import data, yeah. Use realist, that pulls from the tax record. When you're doing a sales contract, you use RAIN, because RAIN will pull in the DPOR, the ACUS, the lead paint, whatever documents were uploaded into the listing. If you use RAIN for a listing you're trying to fill in, it will auto-populate the old seller, the old listing agent. It makes it more complicated because then you're like, why is this person here? So just to avoid that, don't ever use RAIN for a listing. Use realist. Realist listing, RAIN sales contract.
Cool. And then here's a list of the templates that have been already put together here for us.
So no, if you accidentally select James River, that's okay. It's the exact same one as the Suffolk one. And for those in Smithfield, you can use, again, either one, James River or Suffolk. They're all created by me. And every time they update forms, I go in there and update the forms, take out the old and add the new.
So when you select one of these templates, it creates one of these packages for you, a transaction package with all of these forms in that package. And you just go down the list and you start filling in the blanks. And then you transfer it over to Authenticign, you send it to your client to sign electronically, you sign it electronically, and it's done. Pretty freaking cool.
And if you CC me on the transaction, I get it when it's done.
That's true too.
CC station.
CC.
Don't make her review it.
That's right. That's right.
CC. And you can do that with anybody. Anybody you CC on your transactions in Authenticign, go to whoever you wanted to go to. So if you wanted to go to the listing agent for a sales contract, you can CC them and they get it once everybody signs the documents.
Lots of cool stuff. Yeah, CC.
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 Yeah, so within the signings, you would select, your seller for the listings. I'll use that as an example. You would select your sellers, one or two, however many you got. You would select you, and then you would add me, which if I'm not in your contact, you can certainly add me. And then when it gives you an option for remote signer, because there's an option for you to pick, change that to CC, and it'll say, it says in parentheses, if I'm correct, send at end
At
or
end,
something like
yeah.
that. So I would get it once it's all complete. I get it completed, Authenticide. I click the little link like you would to download the document. I see everything just like you guys do. Just remember though, Authenticide, the classic version is going bye-bye. So for those of you who have been using the old one, you have about 8 days left before it goes away forever. So start practicing in the new one. If you need to send me something to fake sign, I mean, certainly send me something to fake sign. I don't care.
I would encourage everybody to practice, you know,
Yeah.
get familiar with the paperwork, create the templates, list your own house, you know, list your neighbor's house, something like that. Yeah, or write a contract to purchase your own house so that you can become familiar with filling in the blanks and going through the paperwork. And the more familiar you become, the easier it is. And so I think it really helps you to present the paperwork to your client. So, because they're going to be completely overwhelmed. So, cool. Questions, thoughts, concerns? Hopefully this was helpful. Well, that's right. You can write a contract in less than 15 minutes. Thank you. Actually, I just did a listing for another agent who's not here because he's at work. But he sent me his client's information. And so I did the listing and I think it was like 5 minutes. So yeah,
Oh,
practice.
I guess I did have a mistake. The buyer does have to sign the deed for on a bank though. It's to acknowledge the exemption. I thought that was right, but I totally forgot to say it.
Cool. All right, gang, we'll let you go. Happy Tuesday. We'll see you again. When? TGIF. Yeah. So if I don't see you before, I'll see you Friday. Bye.